Hello students, very good evening. Welcome to Dhanush channel. So I am going to start Union Public Service Commission Civil Services Examination Prelims 2024 Polity classes. First of all, let me tell you, this is the continuation of the classes that we have discontinued or that was pending as a part of Laksha series. So on that day, on 9th of May 2024, I have said that I will be making some short videos on polity. Pardon me, I was a bit engaged in some personal schedules till today. So from today onwards, you have 14 days of time. So we are left with the two things, guys. One is science and technology, the other one is polity. In that science and technology, I have already shared some videos in the Telegram channel. The Telegram channel that you can find in the subscription or in the description box below. Right, you can just join that. So this classes are going to be continuation of my polity classes that we have discussed in the Laksha series. So this is class number 1. So what you guys do is, everything that is required for this year prelims polity, a comprehensive overview you are going to develop here along with the combination of the Laksha series. All the students who have attended my Laksha series, we have done MCQs on polity on the previous year questions, and the thing is, I have made you to go through certain articles. Whatever the pending works are there, here I am going to say, I will not take more than 45 minutes every day. It is going to be some short videos. I am going to focus only on those things which UPSC will focus on. You just carry this, you just listen to them. It won't take more than 1 week. We'll finish everything. Just take your time so that your polity preparation will be done. So this is class number 1. So what I wanted to cover is, in this, what we have done so far. A quick revision in this class I am going to do. In our Laksha series in polity, I have covered the following things. The first thing that I did is the previous year questions regarding to the so-called prelims, civil services as far as polity is considered. The second thing is, I made everyone to study preamble, the components of preamble. I am sure you are well versed with that. After that, I made you to study Article 1 to Article 51A. So I expect all the students who have attended my classes are well versed with these articles. I already said this, all these articles are extremely important and there is no way that you can escape from this. You have to remember them, and I also have said some cheat codes or some techniques to remember them. Please remember them in that way. So this is the third component that I have discussed. After this, we have discussed what are the parts that we have in Indian Constitution, 22 parts, what are those? And then I have also discussed what are the schedules that we have, the 12 schedules, right? These are the things that we have discussed. And then further, I have discussed the union. In the union, this is part 5. There is union executive, union legislature, judiciary, legislative powers of president and judiciary. In this, executive is done, the respective component of state is also done. In the executive, you have president, vice president, council of ministers, prime minister, and you have attorney general of India. Similarly, in the states you have governor. There is no equivalent post for vice president in the state, council of ministers, chief ministers for the state, and advocate generals. I have discussed about them. So subsequently, I have completed these two. And also, in our last classes, I discussed about what is part to 22, what is part to 21, what is part to 20, and I have discussed up to part 19, miscellaneous provisions, part 19. So what I will be discussing in this series. So just focus on that things that already we have discussed. Whatever it is pending, I am going to cover here. So I hope everyone is well versed with our classes that you have followed. So don't consider this is a fresh class. This is the continuation of the class that we have already done as a part of free Laksha series or initiative that we already have conducted. So be thorough with previous year questions in polity. Look at the techniques, look at the wise words or good words that I have discussed. Subsequently, what is important is remembering the preamble, the terms in the preamble is extremely important. Look at the dates where it is there. So just revise them, what we have discussed. Article 1 to Article 51A, no one should forget it. Part 22. So let's go for a quick recap in this video what we have discussed about these things. So preamble, I said, we, the people of the country, people of India, have solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic and to give to all its citizens justice, socio-economic, political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, uh, justice, liberty, equality of opportunities, and to promote them amongst all, and fraternity, assuring the unity and integrity of the unity, protecting the dignity and upholding the unity and integrity of the country. On this day of 26th November 1949, we do hereby adapt, enact, and give to ourselves this constitution. This is what we have discussed, and I have also said what term means what things. So that is preamble, and then we have discussed whether preamble is a part of Indian constitution or not, whether it can be amended or not. These things we have discussed in preamble. After that, I have discussed what are the 22 parts that we have. Part 1 discusses about the so-called union and its territory, that I have completed part 1 exclusively from Article 1 to Article 4, part 2 citizenship from Article 5 to Article 11, part 3 is about the so-called fundamental rights from Article 12 to Article 12 to Article 35. Then we have fundamental directive principles of state policy, Article 36 to Article 51, and then fundamental duties, Article 51A, where you have to see 51A, small a to 51K. Right, these are the things, and what are the constitutional provisions. Don't forget whether right to exploitation comes under the so-called cultural, whether this is right to exploitation, what are the fundamental rights that you have under right to exploitation, and what are the fundamental right that you have, or under which part of fundamental right is untouchability is present. So these things already we have discussed most extensively in the class. So these are the 5, or until part 4A we have discussed this. So part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 4A. I also made you to remember from Article 36 to Article 51 extensively from Directive Principles of State Policy. You have to remember which article is what, which Constitutional Amendment Act has added which part of the Directive Principles. And then I have also mentioned in our class like what are the Gandhian Directive Principles of State Policy. After this, we have discussed about the so-called Article 51A, that is fundamental duties, and fundamental duties are extremely important. You have to focus on it. So this is how we have covered. After that, I have come to the so-called the next part, that is part 5 speaks about union, part 6 speaks about the states, part 7 it was abolished, part 8 it was about the so-called union territories, part 9 is panchayats, part 9A municipalities, part 9B cooperative societies, part 10 it speaks about the so-called administration of scheduled areas and tribal areas. So like this you have federal scheme of administration. In this I have discussed part 5. In part 5 union you have something called what are the components of union. In the union you have the executive, the legislature, the legislative powers of the president, as well as the so-called union judiciary, that is called Supreme Court. In that I went and I have given a comparative analysis of president, vice president, governor, whether governor term is mentioned in the constitution or not. If it is mentioned, what is the thing, and how governor is appointed, how governor is removed. These things we have discussed. And then council of vice president we have discussed, council of ministers, CM, and these things parallelly we have done that. So the only component that is left in part 5 of Indian constitution is the executive is done, the legislature is pending. Along with this, one more thing that was pending is the union judiciary. Similarly, states you have something like union judiciary means Supreme Court, by the way, right? You do not have a separate judiciary for the union and state, that is Supreme Court. Then for the states you have state executive is done, state legislature is pending, state that is High Court and subordinate courts are pending, that we will do. After this, part 7 is pending. Part 7 is not present now, it was abolished. Part 8 it is pending, that is called it is speaking about union territories. Part 9 speaks about the so-called panchayats, municipalities and cooperative societies, 9, 9A, 9B. Part 10 it speaks about the so-called administration of scheduled areas and tribal areas. So these things we have to do, anyhow it won't take much time. Part 11, Part 12 is going to discuss about the so-called center-state relations. Part 11 particularly deals with administrative as well as legislative relations. Part 12 is going to discuss about the so-called finance, properties, contracts and suits. Part 13 speaks about the so-called trade, commerce and intercourse between the states. Part 14 speaks about the so-called elections. Part 14 speaks about services, Union Public Service Commission, State Public Service Commissions in this. And Part 14A speaks about the so-called tribunals. Part 15 speaks about elections. Part 16, special provisions for certain classes. Part 17 speaks about official languages. Part 18, emergency provisions. Part 19, miscellaneous. Part 20, amendment procedures under Article 368. Part 21, it speaks about the so-called Part 21 speaks about special, temporary and transitional provisions under Article 370 and 371, and Part 22 speaks about the so-called the title of this constitution, short title, commencement, short title and repeats the text in Hindi language, these things. So apart from that, you have to remember the schedules, Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3, Schedule 4. In the original constitution, there were only 8 schedules, then 9, 10, 11, 12 were added. I asked you to remember them also. You have to remember what is there in Schedule 1. Schedule 1 speaks about the names of the union territories and the states. Schedule 2 speaks about the so-called salaries and allowances of few people. Schedule 3 speaks about the so-called oaths and affirmative actions, oaths of certain people. Now what you have to remember is the subject matters or the people who are present in Schedule 2 is different and Schedule 3 is different. Already we have discussed this in class. Please don't forget these things. After that, Schedule 4, extremely important, allocation of seats only in Rajya Sabha, not in Lok Sabha. Fifth schedule, provisions relating to administration and control of scheduled areas and tribal areas except ATMM. Sixth schedule speaks about administration related to ATMM. Seventh schedule speaks about concurrent list, state list, concurrent list and union list. Eighth schedule speaks about the so-called languages. There are 22 languages in the original constitution. There were only 14 languages. So I already made you to remember what is added in 21st, 71st and 92. 21 Sindhi, 71st Konkani, Manipuri, Nepali, 92 Maithili, Bodo, Dogro and Santhali. These things we have discussed, and we have also discussed what is not present here, Rajasthan and English. Ninth schedule, extremely important, added through first constitutional amendment 1951. We have looked at some previous year questions in this, and this was open to judicial review from April 24, 1973. That is, this is the day on which this was Keshwananda Bharati case judgment was given. And this was mentioned in I.R. Coelho case also. Right, this is what we have said. 10th schedule speaks about anti-defection, very important, 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act. 11th schedule speaks about the responsibilities of panchayats. It has 29 matters, 73rd Constitutional Amendment has added it. 12th has 18 matters in it, 74th Constitutional Amendment. So like this, we have to remember this provisions also. Right, so like this, we have done that one also. So you have 28 provisions there, and 29 provisions there, and 18 provisions in this. So this is one thing that we have already covered in our class. Alright guys, apart from that, how I have started guys. So until here we have done, this is the Bare Act, by the way. So please remember the schedules and what is present, what, where. Right, after this, short title, commencement, authoritative text in Hindi language and repeals. I already said what is the short title. Short title is the Constitution of India. Commencement date 26 January 1950. Authoritative text in Hindi language. President shall lay down a language, or he shall convert that into Hindi language. Added through 58th Constitutional Amendment Act. And then I said, however, if there is a dispute between the languages, then English is going to have repeals. Everything is repealed. That is Government of India Act 1935. Independence Act of 1947 was repealed. However, abolition of privy councils was not done here. These are the things that we have discussed earlier. So just remember them. After this, Part 221, temporary, transitional and special provisions. This also I had discussed, only simple things. Remember which article speaks about which one. 371, Maharashtra and Gujarat. 371A, Nagaland. B, Assam. C, Manipur. D, AP and Telangana. E, AP. F, Sikkim. G, Mizoram. H, Arunachal Pradesh. I, Goa. J, Karnataka. These are the things that I asked you to remember. Rest of the things are not that important here. Right, after this, Miscellaneous provisions, extremely important. Power protections of President and Vice President Raj Pramukh's term was deleted. Right. Protection of publications of proceedings of Parliament and state legislatures. So publications can be done. No arrests can be done except if it is a secret meeting. Remunerative post, whether remunerative political post is mentioned here or not, these things we have seen in the class itself. Right. So in the definitions, there are some definitions that I asked you to remember. This was also done under miscellaneous provisions. Emergency provisions, I didn't do it. However, we have done something like Part 20 of Indian Constitution, amendments of the Constitution, power of Parliament to amend the Constitution and procedure thereof. Extremely important. There will be one question. Please remember the articles in detail. Whatever I have discussed this, the power and procedure. This was also done. So what is pending is from emergency provisions is pending. This is pending, that is called official languages. Special provisions regarding to certain classes, elections, tribunals, and then the so-called services, trade, commerce, intercourse, and then we have this thing called Part 11, 12, finance, properties, contract suits, Part 10, scheduled areas and tribal areas, Part 11, relations between central and state in some matters, and these things. So from these are left, whatever is left, I am going to make the videos from now onwards. Apart from that, we have to focus on some other things in Lakshmikant, such as the so-called parliamentary committees. I'll just tell you where to look at. And the first chapter in Lakshmikant I have not covered in the class. That is also important. I'll just make you to remember that. So just go through this. So this is what we have discussed so far, and whatever I am doing is the pending works. So be sure this is not all again a fresh class. This is the same class that I am continuing from my previous discussion. That is a part of, after 22 days break, I am coming back to this video. Right. Don't worry, you have less amount of time, but follow this series. If you are a regular attender of my classes, if you have regularly attended my classes of Laksha series, then this is going to definitely help you. This is going to add you that component of constitution or polity, right? For science and technology, in my group itself, I have added 2 videos of Vision IAS. You just go through it, have a look at it at your free time. More or less, that is more than enough. First of all, you have still 14 days. Don't lose hope. Everything is still there in your hands, heads, and you can make it out work, right? So I am going to start in my next class or in my next lecture with the so-called these articles. Whatever is pending, I'll start this. This is a rough estimate about what I have done in my last class and how I am continuing. Right guys, thanks for joining. Please wait for the next video where I will be starting with the so-called emergency provisions. I hope you remember. Please revise. I am not revising what we have done in the class, like amendment procedures until amendment and miscellaneous provisions. In the miscellaneous, we have said what are the something like protection to the so-called president, governor, Raj Pramukh is deleted, right? Protections to these people. We have already studied these things. Protections of president and Raj Pramukh, how they can be arrested, whether they can be arrested or not, right? Whether civil proceedings can start. If they start, what is the duration that you have to do? Somewhere around 30 days. Amendment of the constitution, whether the bill can be introduced in any house. Joint sitting, whether it is possible or not, whether presidential recommendation is necessary to start it or not, whether it has to be passed with special majority or not, if it has to be ratified by half of the state, then what are the provisions? These things we have discussed, right, in extensive. So whatever it was done in the class, it was done extensively. Whatever it is pending, you just add this component to that, your polity is going to be successful. Your polity is going to be within your hands. Economy we have done, history we have done, geography we have done, environment we have done, and this is polity thing that is going to add advantage to you. So this is a continuation of this, right? So please wait for my class on the so-called emergency provisions. On the emergency provisions, I will be continuing from bottom, right? So thanks for joining guys. I'll be making a short video on emergency provisions, where to look at and what is the entire story about emergency provisions. I'll just give in a very short time. Just go through it again and again. This will be making you